Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, Anniversary Plans. Nathaniel Nate. Harlow squinted at the email on his phone, reading it for the third time. The opportunity was perfect, too perfect to pass up. As the founder of Harlow Security Solutions, a specialized private security firm that catered to high-profile clients, he rarely got chances like this. A potential contract with a Silicon Valley tech giant would double his company's revenue. The catch? The meeting was scheduled during his 10th wedding anniversary weekend. "You're still coming on Friday, right?" Vanessa's voice carried from the kitchen where she was preparing dinner. Her tone held an edge he couldn't quite place. Nate tucked his phone away and entered the kitchen of their suburban Connecticut home. At 42, he still maintained the disciplined physique of his military days. His wife, Vanessa, 5 years his junior, looked up from chopping vegetables. Her dark copper hair was pulled back in a messy bun, highlighting her sharp cheekbones and emerald eyes. "About that," Nate began carefully. Monarch Tech reached out. They want a meeting about their international security protocols. Vanessa's knife stopped mid-chop. "During our anniversary weekend? The one we've been planning for months? The kids are already set to stay with your brother." Their children, 9-year-old Lily and 12-year-old Preston, were the center of their world. The getaway to Vanessa's family cabin was supposed to be their first weekend alone in years. "I know the timing is terrible," Nate admitted, "but this contract could take the company to another level. I can fly out Saturday morning and be back Sunday night. We'd still have Friday night and Monday at the cabin." Vanessa's expression shifted subtly. Was that relief? It disappeared so quickly Nate thought he might have imagined it. "Fine," she said, returning to her chopping with renewed vigor. "I understand." Too easy, Nate thought. Vanessa had been insistent about this weekend for months, meticulously planning every detail. Now she was giving in without a fight? Later that night, as Nate tucked Lily into bed, his daughter looked up at him with earnest blue eyes. "Are you and Mommy still going to the cabin?" "Yes, Princess. I just need to take a quick business trip on Saturday." Lily frowned. "Mommy was on the phone a lot today. She seemed happy about something." "Oh." Nate kept his voice casual. "Did you hear what she was talking about?" Lily shook her head. "She was in her art studio with the door closed. But she was laughing. The way she laughs when you tell her she looks pretty." Nate kissed his daughter's forehead, but something cold had settled in his stomach. Vanessa's art studio was her sanctuary, a converted garden shed where she painted landscapes that sold surprisingly well at local galleries. She'd been spending more time there lately. The next morning, Nate made a decision. He called his business partner and childhood friend, Bennett Wells. "I need you to handle the Monarch meeting," Nate explained. "Family takes priority." Finally, Bennett chuckled. "I've been telling you that for years." What Nate didn't tell Bennett was that he suspected something was wrong with his marriage. Over the past few months, Vanessa had grown distant, constantly checking her phone and becoming defensive when he asked about her art sales. The cabin weekend had been her idea, insistently her idea. Now that he thought about it, she'd only suggested it after he mentioned the potential Monarch contract. As Nate packed for the weekend, he noticed Vanessa texting frantically. When she saw him watching, she quickly set the phone down. "Just confirming the cabin is stocked," she explained with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "My brother Theo was there last weekend. He left some groceries for us." Theo Barrett. Nate had never liked Vanessa's brother. A perpetual drifter who had recently returned to Connecticut after years of finding himself across the country. Since his return 6 months ago, Vanessa had reconnected with him, often meeting for lunch or helping him with his new landscaping business. On Thursday evening, as they loaded the car for their early morning departure, Nate noticed a flash of worry cross Vanessa's face when he mentioned he'd canceled his Saturday meeting. "I thought this weekend was important to you," he explained. "The business can survive without me for 3 days." "Of course," she said, recovering quickly. "That's wonderful." As she turned away, he caught her pulling out her phone again. Chapter 2, The Note. The Blackwater cabin sat on 20 acres of private woodland, nestled beside a small lake 3 hours from their home. The property had been in Vanessa's family for generations, an inheritance from her grandfather. As they pulled up the long gravel driveway, Nate noticed fresh tire tracks that weren't theirs. "Theo must have left this morning," Vanessa commented, following his gaze. The cabin was surprisingly luxurious for a remote property: 3 bedrooms, a modern kitchen, and a spacious deck overlooking the lake. As Preston and Lily raced to claim their rooms, Nate caught Vanessa scanning the living area with unusual intensity. "Looking for something?" he asked. "Just making sure Theo cleaned up properly," she replied, moving toward the kitchen. That evening, they grilled steaks on the deck and reminisced about their early days together. Nate had met Vanessa 12 years ago when her advertising firm handled marketing for his fledgling security company. Her creativity and confidence had captivated him, and within 6 months they were engaged. As darkness fell, they moved inside. Vanessa kept checking her watch. "I'm exhausted from the drive," she announced suddenly. "Why don't we turn in early? Big day of hiking tomorrow." Nate agreed, though it was barely 9 o'clock. As they prepared for bed, he noticed Vanessa take an unusually long shower. When she finally emerged, her hair was freshly washed, and she smelled of her expensive perfume. Odd choices for someone heading straight to sleep. "Just wanted to freshen up," she explained when she caught his questioning look. In the middle of the night, Nate awoke to find Vanessa's side of the bed empty. Checking his watch, he saw it was 2:17 a.m. He was about to get up when he heard the toilet flush and Vanessa slipped back into bed. "Everything okay?" he murmured. "Just bathroom," she whispered, keeping her back to him. The next morning, Vanessa announced she needed to run into the nearest town for some supplies she'd forgotten. "I'll come with you," Nate offered. "No need to uproot everyone," she insisted. "You start that hike with the kids. I'll catch up with you on the trail. There's a path that connects from the north side of the property." After she left, Nate took the children on the promised hike. Preston charged ahead, his lanky frame disappearing around bends in the trail, while Lily stayed close to Nate. "Dad," she said quietly when Preston was out of earshot, "I need to tell you something." The seriousness in her tone made Nate stop. "What is it, sweetheart?" Lily glanced around as if checking for eavesdroppers. "Last night, when you were bringing in the last bags, I saw Mommy hiding something in the garage." "Hiding something?" Lily nodded solemnly. "She didn't see me. She put something behind the big metal cabinets. She was being really sneaky about it." Nate felt his heart rate accelerate, but kept his expression neutral. "Maybe it's a surprise for our anniversary." Lily shook her head. "She looked scared, Dad. Not happy, surprise, scared." When they returned to the cabin for lunch, Vanessa still hadn't returned. Nate checked his phone. No messages, and strangely, her location sharing had been disabled. As Nate prepared sandwiches, Lily approached him with a folded piece of paper. She pressed it into his hand and whispered, "Dad, check the garage now." Nate unfolded the note and read his daughter's careful handwriting. The pit in his stomach deepened. "I'm going to get some firewood from the garage," he announced casually. "Preston, keep an eye on your sister." The detached garage was dark and musty. Nate flicked on the lights and moved toward the metal storage cabinets against the back wall. With effort, he managed to pull one cabinet slightly forward. Wedged in the space behind it was a small black bag. Inside, he found a burner phone, a small notebook, and a prepaid credit card. His hands shaking slightly, Nate turned on the phone. It had only one contact saved, D. The text message thread made his blood run cold. "All clear for tonight. N thinks I'm going to town. Same time as yesterday. Can't wait to feel your hands on me again." The response, Cabin 8, Pine Creek Lodge, 11 a.m. Door will be unlocked. Still planning for your big surprise tomorrow? Nate scrolled through more messages, months of them. The affair had been going on since spring, but it was the most recent exchanges that made his stomach turn. They weren't just planning trysts. They were planning something else. A message from 3 days ago. "And still planning to leave for business Saturday. We'll have from Friday night. Enough time." The response from D. "Supplies ready. Once it's done, no going back." "You're sure about this?" "Your half is already in the offshore account." Vanessa's answer. "More sure than I've ever been about anything. 10 years of marriage is enough. And his life insurance payout will be worth the wait." Chapter 3. The Discovery. Nate sat in the garage for a long time, the burner phone clutched in his hand. The implications were clear. Vanessa and her lover weren't just planning to continue their affair. They were planning to kill him. The notebook contained what appeared to be coded notes about dosages and timing. One entry simply read, "Undetectable if administered over 36 hours. Full cardiac arrest. No trace after 12 hours. A slow, cold rage built inside him. The betrayal went beyond infidelity. This was calculated, premeditated, and his children were here, potentially witnesses or even collateral damage. Nate's mind flashed back to his military days, to the specialized training that had made him valuable to private security firms after his discharge. Skills he had kept honed but hoped never to use again in personal conflict. But this was different. He carefully replaced everything exactly as he'd found it and returned to the cabin. Lily was watching him with worried eyes. "Did you find it?" she whispered when Preston went to the bathroom. Nate nodded, keeping his expression neutral. "Thank you for telling me, Princess. But this has to be our secret for now, okay? Don't tell Preston, and definitely don't tell Mommy you showed me." Lily nodded solemnly. Nate needed more information. He needed to know who Dee was. Dominic? David? The name didn't matter as much as understanding the full scope of their plan. When Vanessa returned 2 hours later, she was flushed and carrying a single bag of groceries. "Sorry I'm late," she said breezily. "Ran into an old friend in town. Got caught up chatting." "Anyone I know?" Nate asked casually. "No one important," she replied, avoiding his eyes. "Just someone from high school." "How was the hike?" That night, Nate pretended nothing was wrong. They grilled hamburgers, played board games with the kids, and reminisced about their early days together. All the while, Nate was cataloging everything Vanessa did, what she prepared, what she suggested he eat or drink. After the kids went to bed, Vanessa opened a bottle of wine. "A toast," she said, handing him a glass of deep red Cabernet. "To 10 years. Nate took the glass, but didn't drink. 10 years, he echoed. "A long time to be with someone." "The best years of my life," she said, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Mine too," he lied, setting his glass down untouched. "I think I'll turn in early. Big day tomorrow." Disappointment flashed across her face. "You're not going to finish your wine?" "Headache coming on," he explained. "Maybe some sleep will help." In bed, he feigned sleep while listening to Vanessa move around the cabin. At midnight, he heard the soft click of the back door. Silently, he moved to the window and watched as she slipped into the woods, flashlight in hand. She was headed toward the property line that connected to the main road. Nate made a decision. He gently woke Lily first, then Preston. "We're going on a special night adventure," he whispered. "But we have to be very quiet. Don't pack anything. Just put on your shoes and jackets." "Where's Mom?" Preston asked, rubbing his eyes. "She had to go check something in town," Nate lied smoothly. "She'll meet us later. This is a surprise adventure." He led the children to his SUV, grateful he'd kept the keys in his pocket rather than leaving them on the hook by the door where Vanessa might have noticed them missing. As they drove down the dark road away from the cabin, Lily spoke up from the back seat. "It's because of the phone, isn't it? The one Mommy was hiding." Nate met her eyes in the rearview mirror. "Yes, Princess. But everything's going to be okay. I promise." Instead of heading home, Nate drove to a motel 30 miles away. He checked them in under a false name, paying cash, a precaution from his security work that now seemed eerily prescient. Once the children were settled in the second bed, Nate sat in the darkness, his mind racing. Tomorrow, he would need to gather evidence, understand exactly what Vanessa and her lover had planned. But tonight, his priority had been getting his children to safety. As he watched Preston and Lily sleep, a hardness settled into his core. In his years of military service and private security work, Nate had developed a simple philosophy: betrayal demanded consequences. And what Vanessa had planned went beyond betrayal. It was an act of war. War required strategy, intelligence, precision, and above all, the element of surprise. Vanessa thought she knew him, the successful but predictable security consultant, the dependable husband and father. What she'd forgotten, or perhaps never fully understood, was that before he was any of those things, Nathaniel Harlow had been a man trained to identify threats and neutralize them permanently. His phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "Where are you?" "I woke up and you're all gone." Nate didn't respond. Let her panic. Let her wonder if her plan had somehow been discovered. By the time she figured it out, it would be too late. She thought she was setting a trap, but she'd unwittingly walked into one of her own making. As dawn broke, Nate made a call to the one person he trusted implicitly, Bennett Wells, his business partner and former military colleague. "I need a deep background check," Nate said when Bennett answered. "Anyone connected to Vanessa who might go by a name starting with D. And I need to know about any new accounts in her name, especially offshore." "Nate, what's going on?" Bennett asked, instantly alert despite the early hour. I'll explain later. For now, just know that Vanessa and the kids are safe, but separated. And this stays between us. After hanging up, Nate looked at his sleeping children and made a silent promise. This wasn't just about his survival anymore. It was about justice. And justice, in Nate's world, was neither kind nor forgiving. Chapter 4, Following the Trail. By mid-morning, Bennett had called back with preliminary information. There's a Dominic Reeves who's been in regular contact with Vanessa for the past 8 months. He's staying at the Pine Creek Lodge not far from your cabin. And you were right about the accounts. There's a new one in the Caymans under a shell company. $500,000 transferred in 3 installments. $500,000? Nate repeated. His life insurance policy was for $2 million. Where did she get that kind of money? That's the other thing, Bennett said grimly. Your joint savings account is empty. And there have been suspicious transfers from your business account to a supplier that doesn't exist. Nate's jaw tightened. She's been embezzling from the company? For how long? At least 6 months. I've got Owen looking into it now. Owen Hayes was their forensic accountant, a man who could trace a penny through the labyrinth of international finance. Keep it quiet, Nate instructed. And Bennett, I need one more thing. A background on this Dominic Reeves. Everything you can find. After checking the children into a more secluded cabin rental under Bennett's name, Nate drove back toward Blackwater Cabin, stopping at a hardware store along the way. He purchased supplies that raised no eyebrows individually but served his purpose collectively. Zip ties, duct tape, a hunting knife, plastic sheeting, bleach. Pine Creek Lodge was a rustic but upscale retreat about 5 miles from the Barrett family cabin. Nate parked in a visitor's spot and walked casually through the property, a baseball cap pulled low over his face. Cabin 8 was situated at the edge of the property, partially obscured by tall pines. From a discreet distance, Nate watched the cabin. Mid-afternoon, a man emerged, tall, athletically built, with close-cropped dark hair. Dominic Reeves looked like he belonged in an upscale fitness magazine. He got into a black Range Rover and drove off. Nate waited 15 minutes before approaching the cabin. The lock was basic, a simple pin tumbler that yielded to his specialized tools in under 30 seconds. Inside, the cabin smelled of expensive cologne and whiskey. Nate moved methodically through the space, documenting everything with his phone's camera. On the kitchen table, he found what he was looking for, a small Ziploc bag containing white powder and carefully measured smaller portions in individual packets. Next to it lay a notebook with chemical formulas and dosage calculations. In the bedroom, the nightstand drawer held another burner phone. Unlike Vanessa's, this one contained numerous contacts, all women's first names. Nate scrolled through the messages, his disgust growing. Dominic Reeves wasn't just Vanessa's lover. He was a practiced predator with multiple concurrent relationships, each message thread revealing manipulation and calculated seduction. But it was the laptop that provided the mother lode. Dominic had been careless or arrogant enough to leave it unlocked. Emails revealed a pattern: wealthy married women, targeted affairs, unexplained deaths or disappearances of husbands, insurance payouts. This wasn't Dominic's first rodeo. Nate found news articles about 3 other men, all husbands of women Dominic had been involved with, all dead of apparent natural causes or accidents within the past 5 years. In each case, the widow had relocated shortly after collecting the insurance money. And in each case, the relationship with Dominic had ended abruptly. Dominic Reeves was a black widow in reverse, seducing women, helping them eliminate their husbands, taking his cut, and moving on to the next target. Nate copied everything to a secure cloud drive before carefully returning the laptop exactly as he'd found it. As he prepared to leave, his phone buzzed with a text from Bennett. You need to see this now? Dominic Reeves isn't his real name. It's Dallas Reinhardt, former pharmaceutical researcher specializing in cardiotoxins. Lost his license for unethical human trials. Dropped off the grid 7 years ago. Attached was a photograph of a younger, more clean-cut version of the man Nate had just seen. Before Nate could respond, another text came through. Vanessa's brother Theo isn't in Connecticut like you thought. He's in the Caymans. Has been for 3 weeks. Account activity shows he's the one who set up the Shell Corporation. The pieces clicked into place. Theo hadn't been at the cabin recently. That had been a cover for Dominic, Dallas, to prepare the property. The groceries Theo had supposedly left were likely the initial doses of whatever they planned to use. And Vanessa's sudden interest in reconnecting with her brother 6 months ago coincided with the beginning of the financial fraud. They'd been planning this for months. Nate's phone rang. Vanessa. He let it go to voicemail. When he checked the message, her voice was frantic. Nate, please. I've called everyone we know. The police are looking for you. They think something happened to you and the kids. Please call me back. She was setting the stage, the concerned wife, reporting her missing family. If their bodies were found later, she'd be the grieving widow who had tried everything to find them. As Nate left the cabin, careful to leave no trace of his presence, his phone buzzed with another call. Unknown number. He answered cautiously. Mr. Harlow. The voice was deep, professional. This is Detective Leroy Walsh with the state police. Your wife has reported you and your children missing under concerning circumstances. We'd like you to come in. We're not missing, Detective, Nate replied calmly. My wife and I had a disagreement. I took the children to give everyone some space to cool down. They're safe with me. Sir, in domestic situations. This isn't a domestic situation, Detective, Nate interrupted. And I'm not legally obligated to disclose my whereabouts to my wife if I don't wish to. The children are with me, their father, and they're perfectly safe. If you'd like to verify that, I'm happy to bring them to the station tomorrow morning. There was a pause. That would be acceptable, Mr. Harlow. After hanging up, Nate drove to a different hardware store in another town. More supplies, a professional-grade voice recorder, a small camera with night vision capabilities, disposable gloves, and a prepaid phone. That evening, after ensuring the children were settled with a trusted family friend, Bennett's sister, a former military intelligence officer who asked no questions, Nate returned to Blackwater cabin. He parked a mile away and approached on foot through the woods. The cabin was dark. Vanessa's car was gone. Nate used the time to plant recording devices throughout the property, focusing on the master bedroom, living room, and kitchen. He uploaded the feeds to a secure server Bennett had prepared. As he finished, headlights swept up the driveway. Nate slipped out the back door and into the cover of trees just as Vanessa's car pulled up, followed by the black Range Rover. Chapter 5. The Conspirators. From his position in the woods, Nate watched as Vanessa and Dominic entered the cabin. Through the listening devices, their conversation came through with perfect clarity. I don't understand where he could have taken them, Vanessa was saying, her voice tight with frustration. The police are involved now. This complicates everything. Calm down, Dominic replied. His voice was smooth, cultured. This is a setback, not a disaster. We adapt the plan. Adapt how? He's gone. With the kids. Think, Vanessa. If he's running, he's suspicious. When did he start acting differently? There was a pause. Yesterday morning. After I went to meet you. He didn't drink the wine I poured him last night. Did he say why? Claimed he had a headache. Dominic swore softly. Did you check the garage? The phone. Silence. Then the sound of hurried footsteps. A few minutes later, Vanessa's voice again, higher-pitched with panic. It's still there, but it's been moved. I left it tucked all the way at the back. Check the messages. More silence. Then, someone's read them. The notification dots are gone. He knows, Dominic stated flatly. But how much? Does he know about the poison? The accounts. I don't know. Vanessa's voice cracked. What do we do now? We stick to the essential plan. The goal is still the same. Nate needs to die. The method changes. When he brings the kids to the police station tomorrow, he'll think he's safe. He'll think he has the upper hand. That's when we strike. How? He won't eat or drink anything I give him now. We don't need subtlety anymore. We need results. There was a metallic sound, a gun being checked. The road between here and town has that sharp curve by the ravine. No guardrail. Cars go off it every few years. Tragic accident. The kids. Collateral damage. Unfortunate, but necessary. The insurance still pays out. Your grief will be more convincing with them gone too. Nate's blood ran cold. They were willing to kill Preston and Lily, their own children, to maintain their cover story. Dallas, I don't know if I can. It's Dominic now, he snapped. And you can. You will. Or I'll make sure the police find evidence that you were embezzling from Nate's company. That you were planning to poison him. That this was all your idea. It wasn't all my idea. You approached me. You showed me what was possible. Your word against mine, darling. And I've done this before. The grieving friend who tried to warn the poor husband about his wife's erratic behavior. Always works. In the woods, Nate recorded everything, the knot of cold fury in his chest growing with every word. When Vanessa and Dominic moved to the bedroom, their conversation turning intimate, he slipped away. He had what he needed. Back at the motel, Nate called Bennett. I need everything we have on Dallas Reinhardt, aka Dominic Reeves. And I need you to move the kids to your lake house upstate. Use the secure transport protocol. That bad? Bennett asked quietly. Worse, Nate replied. They're planning an accident on Dead Man's Curve, with the kids in the car. Bennett's breath hissed through his teeth. Jesus, Nate. You need to go to the police with this. Not yet. I don't have enough hard evidence that would stand up in court. They'd twist it, make me look like the unstable one. I need more. What's your play? Nate's voice was cold. They want to set a trap. I'm going to let them think it worked. The next morning, Nate went to the police station alone. Detective Walsh was waiting, a heavy-set man with intelligent eyes and a perpetually skeptical expression. My children are with their uncle, Nate explained smoothly. After I found evidence my wife was having an affair, I needed space to think. I have custody papers prepared by my attorney. He slid a folder across the desk. Bennett had arranged the documentation overnight. Your wife seems genuinely concerned, Walsh noted, examining the papers. My wife is a talented actress, detective, Nate replied. May I show you something? He produced a thumb drive containing carefully edited selections of the recorded conversations, enough to show Vanessa's infidelity, but not the murder plot. That evidence needed to be preserved for the right moment. Walsh reviewed the recordings, his expression darkening. This still doesn't justify taking the children without notice, Mr. Harlow. I disagree, but I understand your position, Nate conceded. I'll be returning to the cabin today to confront my wife. The children will remain with their uncle until this is resolved. I'd advise against confrontation in these situations. Noted, detective. But this is a private matter between spouses. Unless you're charging me with something? Walsh sighed. No charges. But keep your phone on, Mr. Harlow. And if things escalate, call us immediately. As Nate left the station, he spotted the black Range Rover parked across the street. Dominic was watching, just as Nate had anticipated. The trap was being set. But what Dominic didn't know was that Nate had already disarmed it and prepared one of his own. Chapter 6. The Confrontation. Nate drove toward Dead Man's Curve, the winding section of mountain road where Vanessa and Dominic planned their accident. His military training had taught him to recognize ambush points, and this was perfect, isolated, dangerous, with a sheer drop that virtually guaranteed fatality. He rounded the curve carefully, watching for signs of tampering or sabotage. Nothing obvious, but his instincts told him they were nearby, waiting. A mile past the curve, Nate pulled onto a Forest Service road and parked. He replaced his vehicle's license plate with one he'd prepared earlier, a duplicate of Dominic's, and attached a small GPS tracker to the undercarriage. Then he hiked back through the woods toward Dead Man's Curve, maintaining cover among the trees. He didn't have to wait long. Dominic's Range Rover appeared, moving slowly along the road. It pulled over just before the curve, partially hidden by the tree line. Through binoculars, Nate watched as Dominic exited the vehicle, checked something under the hood, then made a call. 20 minutes later, Vanessa arrived in her Audi. The two talked briefly. Then Dominic handed her something small and metallic, a gun. She tucked it into her jacket pocket. After a lingering kiss, Vanessa drove around the curve and out of sight. Dominic returned to his position, binoculars trained on the road. Nate had expected Dominic's plan would involve either forcing his car off the road or making it appear that Nate had lost control. But adding a weapon suggested they wanted to ensure there were no survivors. They needed to be certain the accident was fatal. Circling through the woods, Nate positioned himself behind Dominic's vehicle. With military precision, he approached silently. Dominic was so focused on the road ahead that he never sensed Nate's presence until the cold barrel of a gun pressed against the back of his head. Hello, Dallas, Nate said softly. Or do you prefer Dominic these days? Dominic froze. You've made a significant miscalculation, Nate. Have I? I think the miscalculation was yours. Assuming I was just another target. A walking insurance policy. Nate pressed the gun harder against Dominic's skull. Hands where I can see them. Slowly. Dominic complied, raising his hands. Whatever Vanessa's told you. Vanessa hasn't told me anything. She doesn't need to. I've heard it all. Every word. Every plan. Including how my children were collateral damage. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Dominic's face. You've been watching us. Not just watching. Listening. Recording. I have to thank you for keeping such detailed records of your previous victims. Very helpful. Dominic's expression shifted into a practiced smile. Let's be reasonable. This doesn't have to end badly. There's money, a lot of it. We can make a deal. A deal, Nate repeated flatly. Like the deals you made with the widows of William Carson, Michael Eberhart, Thomas Lowell, before you disappeared with their money? Dominic's smile faltered. You've been thorough. More thorough than you. Now we're going for a drive. My car, not yours. Nate produced zip ties and secured Dominic's hands behind his back. As they walked through the woods to Nate's vehicle, Dominic maintained his composure. You realize Vanessa is waiting for you at the cabin. I'm counting on it, Nate replied. At Blackwater Cabin, Vanessa paced anxiously. When Nate's SUV finally appeared in the driveway, she positioned herself in the kitchen, the gun hidden but accessible in her pocket. The plan was simple: confront Nate about taking the children, escalate the argument, claim self-defense when she shot him. With Dominic's corroboration that Nate had been volatile and threatening, the physical evidence would support her story. But when the front door opened, it wasn't Nate who entered. It was Detective Walsh. Mrs. Harlow, he greeted her formally. I hope you don't mind the intrusion. Your husband asked me to meet him here to discuss some concerns. Vanessa's hand moved away from her pocket. Concerns? What concerns? Where is Nate? Where are my children? Mr. Harlow will be arriving shortly. The children are safe with family. Walsh moved further into the living room, his experienced eyes scanning the space. Nice place. Been in your family long. 3 generations, Vanessa answered automatically, thrown off balance by the detective's unexpected appearance. Detective, I don't understand why. The sound of another vehicle interrupted her. Through the window, she saw Nate's SUV pull up. Relief flooded her. He was alone. The plan could still work. But as Nate emerged from the driver's side, he opened the rear door and roughly extracted a bound figure. Dominic, his hands secured behind his back, a bruise forming on his jaw. Vanessa felt the blood drain from her face. When Nate entered, pushing Dominic ahead of him, his eyes locked with Vanessa's. They were cold, flat, unrecognizable. Detective, Nate acknowledged Walsh with a nod. Thank you for meeting us. I believe you're acquainted with my wife. This, he shoved Dominic into a chair, is Dallas Reinhardt, also known as Dominic Reeves. He and my wife have been planning my murder for the past 6 months. Walsh's eyebrows rose. That's a serious accusation, Mr. Harlow. I have evidence, Nate replied, placing a thumb drive on the coffee table. Recorded conversations, financial records, documentation of 3 previous murders following the exact same pattern. Vanessa found her voice. This is insane. Nate's having some kind of breakdown, detective. He took our children without telling me, disappeared for days. Save it, Vanessa, Nate cut her off. The recordings include your discussion about using poison, faking an accident, and your agreement that our children were collateral damage. Detective Walsh has heard enough to secure a warrant. The rest will ensure you never see daylight again. Vanessa's face contorted with rage. Her hand plunged into her pocket, emerging with the gun. You ruined everything, she screamed, aiming at Nate. Walsh drew his weapon simultaneously. Drop the gun, Mrs. Harlow. But Vanessa was beyond reason. She fired, once, twice, the shots deafening in the confined space. Nate dove to the side, feeling the burn as a bullet grazed his shoulder. Walsh returned fire, his shot striking Vanessa in the chest. She crumpled to the floor, the gun clattering away. In the chaos, Dominic lunged from his chair, barreling toward the door despite his bound hands. Nate recovered in an instant, tackling him to the ground. With cold efficiency, he delivered a precise blow to Dominic's temple, rendering him unconscious. Walsh was already calling for backup and medical assistance, his gun trained on the subdued Dominic. Nate moved to Vanessa, checking for signs of life. Her breathing was shallow, blood spreading across her blouse. Why? Nate asked, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. We had a good life. The children. Vanessa's eyes focused on him, hatred burning through the pain. You were never supposed to succeed, she gasped. My father's company. You took it and made it yours. It was supposed to be mine. Everything was always about you. Your career. Your success. Harlow Security was failing when I took over, Nate said incredulously. Your father asked me to step in. You agreed. I agreed because he forced me to. She spat, blood bubbling at her lips. And then when I wanted a divorce, you made sure the prenup would leave me with nothing. There is no prenup, Vanessa. We never signed one. Confusion flickered across her face, then understanding, followed by bitter laughter that turned into a cough. He lied to me. All these years. Her eyes shifted to something behind Nate. Dallas promised me freedom. Dallas promised all his victims freedom, Nate replied coldly, right before he disappeared with their money. As sirens wailed in the distance, Vanessa's breathing became more labored. The children, she whispered. Keep them away from Theo. He knows everything. With those cryptic words, Vanessa Harlow closed her eyes for the final time. Chapter 7, Aftermath. The weeks following what the press dubbed the Blackwater tragedy passed in a blur of police interviews, legal proceedings, and the challenging task of shielding Preston and Lily from the worst of the public scrutiny. Nate's shoulder healed quickly. The bullet had only grazed him, but the psychological wounds were deeper, especially for the children. Dominic Reeves, revealed to the world as Dallas Reinhardt, faced multiple charges including conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and involvement in 3 previous murders that had been ruled accidents or natural causes. The evidence Nate had gathered was damning, supplemented by what forensic accountants found in the offshore accounts. Detective Walsh had been thorough, his report corroborating Nate's account of events. Vanessa's shooting was ruled justified, a law enforcement officer responding to an imminent threat. The case against Dominic was airtight, his previous victims exhumed and retested for the specific cardiotoxin he had perfected during his pharmaceutical career. But one loose end remained. Theo Barrett, Vanessa's brother. Vanessa's final words had hinted at his deeper involvement, and financial records confirmed he had indeed set up the offshore accounts. But by the time international authorities moved to apprehend him in the Caymans, Theo had vanished. We'll find him, Bennett assured Nate as they sat in Nate's home office one evening, 3 months after the incident. He can't hide forever. Nate nodded, his expression unreadable. I'm not concerned about the timeline. Only the result. Bennett studied his friend. In the 15 years they'd known each other, through military service, private contracting, and building their security firm, he'd never seen Nate so coldly determined. The betrayal had transformed him, hardening an already disciplined man into something more dangerous. The children seemed to be adjusting, Bennett observed, changing the subject. Preston's doing well in therapy. Lily hasn't spoken about that day since it happened, Nate replied. The therapist says she's processing in her own way. She's strong. Like her father. Nate's phone chimed with a text. He checked it, his expression sharpening. Owens found something in Vanessa's private email accounts. Correspondence with Theo dating back 3 years. They were planning this long before Dominic entered the picture. 3 years. Bennett looked shocked. But that's when we expanded into international contracts, Nate finished. When the company's value tripled. The next day, Nate met with Owen Hayes, their forensic accountant, who had become invaluable in untangling the financial web Vanessa, Dominic, and Theo had woven. It's more extensive than we thought, Owen explained, sliding a folder across Nate's desk. Vanessa was systematically transferring company funds to shell corporations controlled by Theo. Small amounts at first, then larger as they gained confidence. When Dominic entered the picture 9 months ago, the operation accelerated. How much total? Nearly 4 million. About half has been recovered from the Cayman accounts. The rest? Owen shrugged. Likely with Theo. Nate nodded, absorbing the information. And the life insurance policy? Modified 6 months ago. Payout increased to 5 million. Beneficiary changed from you to Vanessa exclusively. So, I was worth 9 million dead, Nate said with grim humor. At least she valued me appropriately. That evening, as Nate tucked Lily into bed, his daughter finally broke her silence about the events at the cabin. Daddy, she whispered, was it my fault? What happened to Mommy? Nate sat on the edge of her bed, choosing his words carefully. No, Princess. What happened was because of choices Mommy made. Very bad choices. You did the right thing showing me that note. Lily's eyes filled with tears. I miss her sometimes. But then I remember she wanted to hurt you. That she didn't care if Preston and I got hurt too. Nate pulled his daughter close. Your mother loved you in her way, Lily. But sometimes people get lost. They forget what's really important. Will you get lost like that? Never, Nate promised. You and Preston are my world. Nothing will ever change that. As Lily drifted to sleep, Nate's phone vibrated with a secure message from a contact he'd established in the Caymans, a former client with connections throughout the Caribbean. Subject located. Santo Domingo. Proceeding per protocol. Confirmation expected within 48 hours. Theo had been found. Chapter 8. The Hunt. Santo Domingo's colonial zone hummed with tourists and locals enjoying the warm evening. Theodore Barrett, now using the name Thomas Bell, sipped a mojito at an outdoor cafe, his attention divided between the beautiful women passing by and the cryptocurrency positions displayed on his tablet. He'd chosen the Dominican Republic carefully, no extradition treaty with the United States, relaxed banking regulations, and a lifestyle that suited his tastes. The funds he'd siphoned from his brother-in-law's company had set him up comfortably, though not as luxuriously as planned. Vanessa's death had complicated things. The life insurance payout would never come, and Dallas, that pretentious fraud with his fake British accent, was singing like a canary to reduce his sentence. Still, Theo had prepared for contingencies. The majority of the embezzled funds were secure in untraceable cryptocurrency wallets. Nate Harlow might be a security expert, but the digital financial world operated by different rules. As darkness fell, Theo settled his bill and began the short walk to his rented villa. The narrow streets were less crowded now, the historic buildings casting long shadows. He felt a prickle of unease, the sensation of being watched. Glancing over his shoulder, he saw nothing unusual. Paranoia, he told himself. Natural under the circumstances. When he reached his villa, Theo carefully checked the security system he'd installed. No signs of tampering. He entered, reset the alarm, and poured himself a whiskey. As he moved through the dimly lit living room toward the balcony doors, a voice spoke from the darkness. Hello, Theo. Theo's glass crashed to the floor as he spun around. Nate Harlow sat in an armchair in the corner, his pose relaxed, his eyes anything but. How? Theo began, his hand instinctively moving toward the desk drawer where he kept a gun. I wouldn't, Nate advised quietly. Bennett has your Glock, along with your passport, backup passport, and those external hard drives you thought were so well hidden. As if summoned, Bennett emerged from the hallway leading to the bedrooms, holding the items Nate had mentioned. You can't touch me here, Theo blustered, backing toward the door. No extradition. And if you try anything, it's kidnapping. International incident. Nate smiled thinly. Is that what you told yourself? That I'd be constrained by legal niceties? After you helped plan the murder of my children? That wasn't me. Theo protested, genuine fear creeping into his voice. That was all Dallas. Vanessa and I just wanted the company money. The life insurance was Dallas's idea. You're lying, Nate stated flatly. Vanessa's emails to you discussed eliminating me as early as 3 years ago, long before Dallas. Emails can be faked, Theo countered desperately. True. But the offshore account you established specifically for post-event distribution is quite real, as is the chemical compound you purchased through your old pharmaceutical connections. The same compound found in Dallas's possession. Theo's face drained of color. What do you want? Justice, Nate replied simply, but not the kind dispensed in courtrooms. I have money, Theo offered quickly. More than you've found. Millions. It's yours. I don't want your blood money, Theo. I want answers. Then I want you to experience what you planned for me and my children. Over the next 2 hours, Nate systematically broke down Theo's resistance. The plan had indeed been Theo's initially. Resentment over his father leaving control of the family business to Nate rather than his own son had festered for years. Vanessa, always jealous of Nate's success where her own business ventures had failed, had been an eager conspirator. Dallas Reinhardt had been Theo's connection from his pharmaceutical days, a man who had learned that killing for profit was more lucrative than developing legitimate medications. Together, they had planned an operation that would have netted them millions, the embezzled company funds, Nate's life insurance, and eventually the sale of Harlow Security itself once Vanessa inherited Nate's controlling interest. And the children? Nate asked, his voice deadly calm. Was that always part of the plan? Theo hesitated too long. Answer me. Nate's control slipped for the first time, his voice rising sharply. Vanessa wanted custody, Theo admitted finally. But Dallas said they'd seen too much, that they'd ask questions as they got older. The accident at Dead Man's Curve was his solution. 3 casualties, not 1. Bennett, who had remained silent throughout the interrogation, placed a hand on Nate's shoulder, a reminder of boundaries they'd established, lines they wouldn't cross no matter the provocation. Nate nodded almost imperceptibly and rose to his feet. Thank you for your honesty, Theo. Belated as it is. So what happens now? Theo asked, his voice shaking. You kill me? Dump my body in the Caribbean? Nothing so dramatic, Nate assured him. Bennett, if you would. Bennett produced a syringe and approached Theo, who shrank back in terror. No, please. You can't. Relax, Bennett said dryly. It's just a sedative. You'll wake up with a headache and a new perspective on your future. As Theo slipped into unconsciousness, Nate made a call. Package ready for delivery. When Theodore Barrett regained consciousness, he was no longer in his Santo Domingo villa. He was in a stark, windowless room, handcuffed to a metal chair. Across from him sat Detective Walsh, a manila folder open on the table between them. Welcome back to the United States, Mr. Barrett, Walsh greeted him. Specifically, to a federal holding facility. You have quite the list of charges awaiting you. Conspiracy to commit murder, international financial fraud, embezzlement, and my personal favorite, attempted child endangerment. This is illegal, Theo sputtered. I was kidnapped. Drugged. Walsh raised an eyebrow. According to official records, you were apprehended at Miami International Airport attempting to enter the country with false identification. 3 witnesses have signed statements to that effect. That's a lie. I was in Santo Domingo. Nate Harlow and his partner broke into my villa. Mr. Harlow? Walsh consulted his notes with exaggerated thoroughness. According to his travel documents and electronic records, Mr. Harlow has been in Connecticut continuously for the past week. In fact, he hosted a charity event for children's trauma support the very night you claim he was in the Dominican Republic. Theo stared in disbelief. That's not possible. Digital timestamps, credit card receipts, and about 50 witnesses say otherwise, Walsh replied. Now, let's discuss these offshore accounts and your communications with Dallas Reinhardt. As the interrogation continued, Theo realized the full extent of Nate's revenge. He hadn't killed Theo, he'd done something far worse. He'd ensured that Theodore Barrett would spend the rest of his life in a federal prison, his crimes fully documented, his protestations about Nate's involvement dismissed as desperate fabrications. Justice, Nate Harlow style. Chapter 9, New Beginnings. 1 year after the events at Blackwater Cabin, Nate stood on the deck of his new home overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The move to California had been necessary. Too many painful memories in Connecticut, too much notoriety after the media frenzy surrounding the case. Harlow Security Solutions had not only survived the scandal, but thrived. With Vanessa's embezzlement exposed and the stolen funds largely recovered, the company had expanded its international operations. Nate had promoted Bennett to co-CEO, allowing himself more time with the children while maintaining strategic oversight of the business. Preston, now 13, had shown remarkable resilience. After initial anger and confusion, he had channeled his emotions into competitive swimming, breaking junior records and finding healthy discipline in the sport. His therapist reported significant progress in processing his mother's betrayal. Lily, at 10, remained more enigmatic. Quieter than before, she had developed a passion for chess, a game of strategy and foresight that Nate recognized as her way of establishing control in an unpredictable world. The bond between father and daughter had deepened, their shared experience at the cabin creating an unspoken understanding. The legal aftermath had proceeded exactly as Nate had anticipated. Dallas Reinhardt had received multiple life sentences without the possibility of parole. Theodore Barrett, despite his claims of being abducted from the Dominican Republic, had been convicted on all counts, his sentence nearly as severe as Reinhardt's. Detective Walsh had been promoted to captain, his handling of the complex case earning him professional recognition. He maintained occasional contact with Nate, checking in on the family's well-being. The doorbell rang, interrupting Nate's reflections. He opened it to find Marion Wells, Bennett's sister. Over the past year, her role had evolved from trusted protector of the children during the crisis to friend and eventually something more. The kids ready? She asked with a warm smile. As a former military intelligence officer now working in private security consulting, Marianne understood Nate's world in ways few others could. Almost, Nate replied, inviting her in. Preston's insisting on packing his own gear this time. Independence, Marianne noted. That's progress. Their weekend camping trip had become a monthly tradition, a time for the children to experience normal family activities while rebuilding their sense of safety in the world. As they prepared to leave, Nate's secure phone buzzed with a text from Bennett. Package delivered. Final confirmation received. Nate deleted the message, satisfaction settling in his chest. The package referred to the last piece of evidence linking Nate to Theodore Barrett's extraction from Santo Domingo, a video recording that could have contradicted the official narrative of Barrett's arrest in Miami. Now it was gone, the final loose end tied. Everything okay? Marianne asked, noting his expression. Perfect, Nate replied, and meant it. The past year had taught him that justice and revenge were sometimes indistinguishable, that protection of loved ones justified extreme measures, and that betrayal's only appropriate answer was consequence. In the garage, Preston and Lily loaded their backpacks into Marianne's SUV, arguing good-naturedly about which hiking trail they should tackle first. Nate watched them, his children, resilient and healing despite the trauma inflicted by those who should have protected them. He had once been Nathaniel Harlow, successful businessman and devoted family man. Now he was something more complex, a man who had faced the darkest betrayal and emerged not broken, but hardened. A man who had discovered that the skills he'd developed to protect others could be turned toward retribution when necessary. A man who never forgave betrayal. As they drove toward the mountains, Lily caught her father's eye in the rearview mirror. She gave him a small, knowing smile, an acknowledgement of what they had survived together, what they had overcome. Nate smiled back, his resolution unshaken. The past was settled. The future, like the Pacific horizon, stretched wide and open before them. And if new threats emerged, as they sometimes did in this unpredictable world, Nate Harlow would be ready. Some men were defined by their capacity for forgiveness. Nate Harlow was defined by his refusal to grant it to those who had proved themselves unworthy. It wasn't just justice. It was wisdom. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.